seem to have control over the left side of your body, while I feel dominant on the right. Oh, let go of that.
Oh, bitch! How about a little respect for the deceased?
Well, sometimes you can't get out and about as much as you would like to. You're stuck in for some reason, like I'm stuck in today. And then, yes, you get bored and you get fed up with looking at the same four walls.
He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. Here he goes. Do it. Do it. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, get him nice and clean, you son of a bitch. So satisfying. I got it. Clean it. Now, don't worry.
See, that one wasn't violent or anything. Just crawling
To his doom.
into John Malkovich's brain.
Oh, I'm glad he said brain. Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.
So before we talk about this frivolous business we're about to talk about,
Uh-oh, yes.
I would like you to relate to me and our friends at home what happened when you had an automotive mishap in downtown Keene
Oh,
last
how
week.
did you hear about that?
You told me about it.
Oh, did I?
And I thought it was very funny, and I'd like to share it with them because I thought it was music. If legally you can talk about this.
Well, yeah, it was completely my fault. I was driving down for those of you who don't live in Keene, you'll have no idea all the directionalities and things. But as you know, Main Street driving north turns into a roundabout. And so I was driving from Court Street onto it and, looked around, nobody was there and everything looked good. So I proceeded. I wasn't going real fast. And the light, this was following like 4 or 5 days of just overwhelmingly hot weather, completely clear blue skies. So the sun, this was like 11 o'clock, was exactly where it needed to be, struck my windshield for like a second, and then this car came out of nowhere, and I hit it. So boom, and off we went, and we started talking about it. So I said, let's pull over here. We pull up. And as we get out, and I'm getting out, and they're saying, everybody okay? Yeah, we're fine. Oh, you're the Cinemaniac. And I said, yeah, I guess I can't pull away now because you'll know exactly how to get a hold of me. So anyway, one of the problems of the grandiose fame which we enjoy.
You just can't hit and run like you used to.
That's right.
Being, the stature that we have, which is roughly about this tall. So it wasn't like an insect on your windshield or anything that caused that?
No, wasn't any kind of little thing like that, anything even tinier. But there are things that we could discuss. Perhaps you would like to elucidate.
Sure. And emancipate and proclamate and everything else. Eradicate, if we can. So we are back with yet another Marvel movie. It's been about 2 weeks, so it's time for another Marvel movie. This time, the sequel to a very lighthearted Marvel film from however many years ago. We have Paul Rudd returning and Evangeline Lilly returning and Michael Douglas returning, amongst others, in a film entitled Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Accidentally pull a speaker loose, please turn it in at our snack bar or box office.
Humor.
It's that line in the film is not as it comes off differently. It plays out better in the film.
Yeah, it's not as upfront.
It's not as you dudes are idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, that's there, but it's not as aggressive as it is in the trailer.
Right.
I really enjoyed the first Ant-Man movie because it was just a lot of fun.
Right, I did too.
And the whole size things where the whole idea is that this guy can shrink to a very tiny size but retain his strength at that size. So, a little tiny thing punching somebody out is kind of funny. And in this film, you have the Wasp, which is Evangeline Lilly's character, who has similar abilities but also has wings and can fly. I liked that the first film acknowledged that there was an Ant-Man in the 60s, the Henry Pym character, played by Michael Douglas. So it's like, oh yeah, he did this a long time ago in that suit, so those comics are legit. Not that any of this stuff was ever real or anything, but this is the most current incarnation of the Ant-Man. So basically the very basic plot is, I like that they did this. This isn't the end of the universe. This isn't a world-sucking vortex. Right. This isn't some creature who wants to eradicate all humanity. This is a thing these guys got to do.
Right.
And basically what you see is there's some backstory where Michael Douglas and his wife had to go to this other dimension, or his wife is played by Michelle Pfeiffer, got sucked into another dimension.
I wish
a long
I
time ago.
got $1 for every time they said the word quantum in this movie. Yeah.
Well, the quantum industry got deep pockets.
That must be it.
The quantum lobby. So basically, this film is about trying to go back into this other dimension and bring back Michelle Pfeiffer so that the family can be whole again. And there's some other things going on, but it's not much. It's What I liked about it is that it feels like a 70s or 60s comic book, which is what I liked about comic books, which was, I'm going to grab this issue of Ant-Man, and it's going to have the beginning of a story, and at the end, that story is resolved. It's not like you have to read 50 stories and the crossovers and all this stuff, which is what the Marvel movies are like now. They're always part of a larger thing. And so it was fast, it was fun, it's the team working together, the action was very well shot. According to a thing I saw this at a chain theater in Pennsylvania. They had a little featurette before the film, and it shows they used actual cars in actual stunts, flipping over and flying through the air, which is almost never done anymore, so that was nice to see. It used the Partridge Family theme twice, so as a fan, I got to hear that in surround sound twice, and that was great. So I had a really good time. For any consumer information aspect, there is a little mid-credit sequence, and there is a little bit of something after the credits are over. A lot of times people think, oh, they put a little something at the beginning of the credits, I can go now. And then, then there's also something in the middle. That must be it.
Yeah, but I didn't think the second one was worth waiting for.
The second one in no way was worth waiting for. It was just a joke.
They could have recut the first one a little bit differently, because they kind of tie it in with all, as they always do with all the other.
Right.
And there's references to that. Paul Rudd, it's kind of fun. Paul Rudd talks about, oh yeah, Cap called me up and we had to go, and Evangeline Lilly's going, oh, Cap really had the.
And I feel like if you hadn't seen anything else, if you've only ever seen this movie, it still works.
Yeah.
There's a reference to what happens.
He's referencing another superhero. So
and other stuff, but even had you not seen Infinity War and how that ends, the ending of this film would still be like, oh, because it's the same impact. So, anyway, what did you think of that?
Not that you're making reference to anything about the end of the movie that we like to we give away or anything like that. This was a huge crowd pleaser, and I always. If I differ from my personal feeling about something, I like to try to say. I went to an early evening, like 6:30 showing on Saturday.
Prime time.
And well, actually, I was expecting it to not be terribly busy. It was a beautiful day. I expected either afternoon or later ones, and it was packed, and everybody just seemed to love it. Lots of laughs and things. For me, and this is going to be stupid, but good. Fiction, and I think I realize I'm probably overanalyzing Ant-Man as opposed to other superhero movies. But good fiction, I think, tells you, Stephen King always said, you accept one thing, and then the rest of the world works the same way. King would say there were vampires. Okay, you accept that. So we go to a superhero movie, we accept that the red sun gives you superpowers, or you can be bitten by a radioactive spider. This one had so many unbelievable scientific inaccuracies that unfortunately it drove me nuts. And I'm going to highlight a few of them. As much fun as it was, and there were many moments, particularly with Paul Rudd, he seemed to be having so much fun that he really kind of stood out and saved the movie for me. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. And unfortunately, this is why, and it's the stupid science behind it. They shrink down, and they're running along and they're crawling up people's arms and everything like that. We always thought, oh well, okay, they don't make reference to it, but I guess for some reason they don't still weigh 200 pounds. But then he grows super big and falls into the water and displaces thousands of gallons of water. In order to do that, you had to have the same mass. The cars are driving. There are a couple of scenes. I mean, sorry, but I think this is fair.
Well,
probably so. But the cars are driving. They're being chased. Okay, and they have this kind of fun thing, as you saw in the trailer. I think you shrink the building down, and he can wheel it away, and that's kind of fun. But so they can expand cars. He carries around these little matchbox cars.
It's a Hot Wheels carrying case.
Puts it around and boom, and you can create the car, and that's kind of cool. So they get to driving, and several times they shrink back down really fast, and then they go underneath the other car. Well, in order for the tires to be going and traveling the same distance in a rotation, anyway, that's what bothered me about it. And if they just throw away a scientific line for me, I'd be happy about it. So that's me being really a pain in the ass, and I recognize that, but it took me out of it. So unfortunately, I didn't enjoy it as much. As you know, I'm usually much less critical on video. And so two things, actually, I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to watching this again on video and seeing if I'm less critical of and less demanding of it. As a precursor to next week, one of my favorite movies, and I think yours as well, from this past year, A Quiet Place, is coming out. And I'm going to be interested to see if that's as effective by myself as it was in a theater where, as you and I think both experienced in that one, everybody was quiet. So anyway, Ant-Man and Wasp, huge crowd pleaser. I enjoyed it. It just was a little too silly for me.
So you probably won't be binging the Ant-Man film.
No, I probably, and in fact, it didn't make me so sick that I felt that I had to expectorate or anything like that. But we can talk about something. You may well be seeing this in the next few years, depending on our electoral process. In the future, in the near future, when things are looking tough, the government decides, hey, we're going to be really strict about laws, and you better abide by them, except for one, I think it's a 12-hour period. I usually tend to think of it as a day. You go back and anything is legal. Murder is legal. Theft is legal. Anything that you might want to. Didn't you always wonder how this happened? Well, now you can go check it out and see what happened in the First Purge.
Begins, so you still have time to add to the fun of watching the movie.
Hard to see what was going on. Is that what bothers you in some movies?
I didn't like the first Purge movie because it took place with shaky cameras in the dark.
Well, you're not going to like this one. Not that he had a chance to see it.
I didn't have a chance to see it.
I kind of enjoy them. I mean, as any film is, it's going to be a cathartic release. And so you see, and these maintain the idea that the bad guys get their comeuppance, ultimately. But what I've enjoyed from The Purge is there are lots of pretty colors and everything. It's all, it is hard to see some things, and it resorts to quick cuts for jump scares and things like that, which I don't like and respect either. But there are, what I've taken from The Purge most of the time are really creepy ways that people think of trying to injure or kill each other. And then there are lots of weird looking costumes, weird scary masks and stuff. So that's all I went to this one to see. I didn't, as you say, I didn't really care about learning, the backstory of the Purge. So that isn't real. Folks who are huge fans, and I guess there must be them, because isn't this like the fourth one?
They don't make them if they don't make money.
Yeah. So anyway, the First Purge, what more can you expect? Not a whole lot. I don't know where else they're going to go, because as you and I were talking, I think the last one, the one before this one, the good senator kind of took over, and it looked like they were going to end that. Obviously, they can revise those kinds of things. But if you like The Purge, it's more of the same. So there.
If you'll spend a couple hours in purgatory.
Ba-dum-bum.
So that is all we have to talk about, which is currently in theaters that we saw. And we thank our friends at the Colonial Theater for sponsoring this fine program. And they're not showing either of those movies, but they're showing really good stuff, so check them out. Now we move on to that which you can see on the home video service format, channel, device of your choice. First up is a film, one of them they're R-rated comedies, not for the whole family, in which a bunch of parents decide to stop the processes, the wheels in motion, the ways of laws of nature of their children losing their virginity on prom night. They become blockers.
Peaceful stroll outdoors, doing little simple chores.
Well, I'll have to
I
admit,
hope they're very proud of them.
on video, I didn't watch this on video.
I didn't watch it in the theater.
Well, I watched it in the theater and had my first purge. This is about as worthless as motion pictures can be. It's got to make. It's clear that the audience they're shooting for are just phenomenally juvenile teenagers who might be able to get into the R-rated film. If we bring the super up, I'm not sure if we've got the super, but I do the little lower thirds that tell about what they are. And it's a particular color. It's yellow because I just felt this was like urinating on the screen. And that probably would have gotten a big laugh because that's the level of this humor. This rocketed immediately or dropped to the bottom of my list, or maybe the top of my worst list. I just thought it was ultimately completely unredeemable. Hated blockers.
So this was the comedic equivalent of watching a never-ending religious and/or political crisis in the Middle East?
I'd rather be stuck in a hot desert, abandoned by a friend of mine, in the event that Rosamund Pike and John Hamm could come back and save me, because that's what happens. Hamm is a Secret Service agent who is helping a diplomat return to the Middle East out there. I'm not great on I know the name of it, but I'm hedging. I'm not great on my geography. But you got to return back to where you left an old friend and try to find them. Unfortunately, he's stuck in Beirut.
Wide open style that really lets you have it. Schmidt, Big Mouth.
Ooh, you got to applaud
Vacation
there.
Paradise.
You got to applaud even at the trailer. I really have learned to like Ham. He's usually a supporting character. I don't know if he's ever going to be strong enough to really helm an entire, particularly serious film, but he's really good. He reminds me he should play Jonathan Archer's brother or something on.
I'm sure that was part of the character design intent.
Right, most likely. But Rosamund Pike steals the show. I'm really a big fan of hers. She's terrific in pretty much anything, strangely enough. She's also in 7 Days in Entebbe, which we were going to review, but neither one of us got a chance to see it. So maybe you'll see it coming up. She's in that as well. But she's terrific. So the two of them are really solid. This is exactly what you would expect. A pretty taut, well-shot, well-cut action thriller taking place as two, a CIA agent is helping a diplomat get somebody out of Beirut. And so there's guns and all sorts of stuff blown up and political intrigue. And I thought, in particular, I thought this would have worked well. I didn't see it in the theaters, but I thought it would have worked well either place. But you got a chance to watch it at home now, and I thought Beirut was pretty good.
Speaking of early 70s films about mutant sheep,
As we often do.
AGFA and Something Weird Video joined together to provide a video release unlike anything we've talked about so far this week, at least. It's a film from 1972 about a mutant killer sheep entitled The Godmonster of Indian Flats.
Every cup tastes good as fresh Purge.
Because it is fresh Purge.
Oh, I like it better.
Okay, so it's better.
I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
better than that looks.
Well, no, it
So-
isn't, and that's the point,
Well,
I think.
Okay, so you saw it as a riff track.
Yes.
I watched it. I took it seriously.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
So the film features, for fans of 60s, 70s genre films, it's got Stuart Lancaster, who was in a lot of the Russ Meyer movies, has Erica Gavin, very, very briefly, who's in a lot of the Russ Meyer movies. And overall, what I liked best about this is that this was shot entirely on location around, let's say, Reno, Nevada, or somewhere else. The opening takes place in Reno, so you see early 70s Reno inside and outside of casinos and what everybody looked like because it was just shot there. And then another place in, it might have been somewhere in Utah, so it's like the desert.
Right.
So you see these desert landscapes and you see this little former gold rush town that was now sort of like quirky, old-timey saloons, and they put on a lot of stunt shows and old-timey shows, and it's like going back in time. Now, the majority of the film is about people trying to get mining rights in an old mine that's shut down. So it's like drama and intrigue and all that stuff. And the side thing is this mutant sheep that's born that might have been a result of something that came up out of the mine.
Right,
Is in like a gas or something. And you don't really see the monster until like the last 20 minutes or less of the film. It's really more about all of this machinations and dirty dealings and everything. But I thought the acting was actually pretty good for the most part. It's very competently shot. It's a little loose. It's weak, but really for me it was like, wow, this is really cool. Just the time and place it was shot. So the transfer is quite good. It's very sharp. It's not perfect. It's a little bit faded. I think they're just working from a print of this thing. But because it's Something Weird, if you ever bought any of the old Image Something Weird DVDs, they're loaded with extras. So you get another entire bonus movie called The Legend of Bigfoot, which is a Bigfoot documentary, which is really a nature documentary where there, once in a while, it's like you're seeing footage of squirrels and streams and mountains and deer, and it's like, could Bigfoot be far behind? There's like almost nothing to do with Bigfoot. The most dramatic thing of this movie is there are two squirrels frolicking and one gets run over by a Jeep and the other comes and looks at its dead mate. Sounds really depressing because it is. Then because it's Something Weird, there's a short UFO documentary from 1964 where they interview people who might have seen UFOs. There's my favorite, worth the price of admission alone, an educational film for bus drivers, school bus drivers, on how to deal with school bus fires from 1978. A whole bunch of monster movie trailers from the AGFA archives. It's a really, really fun package. So I really enjoyed it a lot. I suppose if you really, really hate the movie, you could watch the Riff Tracks version and get some of your time back in a way. Or if you really, really like the movie, you could watch the Riff Tracks version and get some of your time back in a way. Okay, up next is the Arrow Video Corner, which a lot of us enjoy, at least me. I don't know if is there?
You had a chance.
Well, you don't have to bring the thing up if you. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
And
Perfect.
as Tom
Watch
always,
this.
he's going to catch it
Watch
right
this.
in his. He's going to. Oh, there it is, right in the knuckle.
Didn't hurt
right
at
in
all.
the third knuckle. First of all, we had a film we should have talked about last week, but we ran out of time. It's a film by Abel Ferrara, he of Ms. 45, of Bad Lieutenant, of Driller Killer, of many, many other things. Stars Lily Taylor. This film is from, I believe, 1994, about a Manhattan grad student who gets bitten by a vampire and wrestles with the moral conundrums and philosophical machinations of having to suck blood for a living and being a victim of the addiction.
Car wash, make it look like new. Watch it in the car wash that lets you see right through.
One I could find.
Yeah,
Oh, and we're back. You know, I drove here to shoot this show in my very extremely reliable, very expensive car. It was an Able Ferrari. So. Sorry, I didn't see it.
If
so
we had a
that's my
studio audience,
contribution.
they'd be reacting
Yes,
to that
I'm
right
sure
now,
they
but
would.
Sadly, we don't. Just groans from the control room.
Yes.
So this is a film shot in black and white, beautifully shot in black and white,
60s
I must
or
say.
something?
No, this is 1994.
Really?
Abel Ferrara chose to
Wow.
go black and white, which I don't know that he had done
Interesting.
before. And shot on the streets of New York and in apartments all on location. He's a New York City guy. And I'm not really a fan of his movies. This
Right.
one, so okay, it's Arrow. It looked great. Really nice photography. At times, really striking black and white photography. Christopher Walken's in it. Annabella Sciorra, Lily Taylor, some faces you recognize. And my problem with this is it gets a little dialogue-y and a little pretentious with the dialogue-y. A little brooding, smoking a cigarette, pontificating kind of stuff, which Ferrara can do. It's also very gritty and skeevy and gruesome at times, which is what I always think of when I think of Abel Ferrara. So basically you have Lily Taylor as this person who has been bitten by a vampire on her way home one night, and how she deals with that, and who she chooses to feed on, and how she chooses to, deal with life as this kind of other thing. And it's interesting, and it does pontificate. If you want a little bit more headspace in your vampire movies than you usually get, it's there. There are moments of ferocity that are pretty grim and creepy. It's really the whole thing is a parallel for heroin addiction, which Ferrara was in the throes of either before, during, or while after he was making this film. And it starts off pretty subtle, and you're like, wow, this is a really clever parallel. And then it gets really blatantly, okay, well, this is what they're talking about. So if you're a fan of New York indie art house movies of the 90s, this is exactly what that is. Lily Taylor is very strong in it, and as is everybody, really. Again, this being Arrow, this disc is insanely loaded with stuff. There's a Ferrara commentary. There may be an additional commentary with the actors. I think there might be 2 tracks. There's a quite long and in-depth making of. There are vintage, there's a 10 or 20 minutes of camcorder footage of Abel Ferrara editing the movie in his edit suite in New York back then. So if you like him, like any good extras should, it gives you context for how and why the movie was made. It also does what I like in that it's looking back with some distance about how this impacted the lives of the people who made it or influenced other people. So I watched a good chunk of the extras. Honestly, didn't love the movie enough to want to watch all of them, but if you like it, there is at least equal to the running time of this film an amount of stuff that tells you about the movie.
Okay.
So that's The Addiction. That's out now. What's next? Speaking of Arrow, if I may.
You should.
Just throwing questions.
I'll grab the
if you
next
have-
one. How's
yeah,
that sound?
okay. Oh, that works for me. You've seen the next one. So up next, this is a set that I was very excited about, and I have been thoroughly, I say have been because I didn't watch the last movie yet, thoroughly enjoying. This is a set of 5 films, spaghetti westerns from the early to mid-'60s, let's say, and it's in a deluxe package, and we'll just get to it. It's called The Complete Sartana.
Jane, listen, help me out, will you? Harold hates my coffee. What kind do you use?
And we're back.
Okay, I love these movies.
Okay.
I have never seen a Sartana film until I got this set. I'd always heard of them because there were so many series. Okay, Clint Eastwood did the Man with No Name, Sergio Leone series, and a million, it's the Italian film industry, a million imitations came out. You had Sartana, you had Sabata, you had Django, and then they would make one of those and they'd be successful, so people would crank out rip-offs of those where they would just say, hey, it's a Sabata movie. It's got nothing to do with the other films, but hey, it's Sabata. They may not even say Sabata in the film. These are the actual Sabata films. And Sartana. Sabata, Sartana. See, there's so damn many of these things. Sartana. It's Sartana, tell me if you've heard this before. He's a mysterious stranger who rides into town with a wide-brimmed hat and a cloak. And he plays both ends against the middle.
Yeah.
Sound familiar? Yeah. So, and who cares? All the spaghetti westerns at their base are similar. What I love about spaghetti westerns is that they're weird. The music is super cool. It's like surf rock, twangy guitar music. It's like, Dwayne Eddy on a bender. And you've got, people have weird weapons, and the villains are weird and kind of perverse, and they're stylishly shot, and they just have a weird look. And to me, a spaghetti western, they're all supposed to take place in this southwest United States. I've never watched one and thought I was watching the United States. Even though they reference the Union, it always feels like it's this weird, bizarre, alternate universe Europe where everybody speaks English with a Texas accent. So you have a couple of different actors who played Sartana over the course of these 5 films, which is fine. He has the same costume, it's the same character type. And they're pretty funny. They're not overt comedies, but it's got this black humor in how he just kills people off and on. Like at one point he's sitting in a restaurant and he has a big, large, cow flop looking loaf of bread, and these bad guys come in to try to run a number on him. And all of a sudden the bread explodes and he's been hiding his gun inside, and he shoots them all through the loaf of bread, which does not act as a silencer, funny enough. And he's got this little 4-shot pistol, and I couldn't recount all the plot details of these films, and I'm just going to give you an overview because it's 5 movies. But they look fantastic. You have your choice of English or Italian dub. I went the English because that's how I've always seen these movies. All of them have a commentary by a film scholar about the film and then everybody else in the film, their history and how they fall into the genre and the industry as a whole and all their careers. You have interviews with the people who directed, who wrote, who scored these films. You have interviews with the actors. Sal Borghese, I believe is how you pronounce his name, is a very familiar face if you've watched much Italian cinema, the 70s, 60s through 80s. It's a half hour with him. And he's a guy I know and like, and I never knew basically even his name, and now I get a half hour overview of his life.
Do you know, we highlight Arrow quite a bit, and they do such tremendous restoration and with all of the additions. Do you know, and I just thought about this right now, does Arrow go and find these interviews, or do they go and interview these people?
They conduct these interviews.
Really? Wow.
Occasionally, if they're releasing something that has come out before, they may do what they call use what they call archival interviews, which is just something somebody else already did.
Right.
A lot of times that's done if somebody is no longer able, be it due to health or lack of life, to do an interview. Or sometimes it's like, well, somebody already gave an excellent interview, so we'll just use that one.
Okay.
And I love that about Arrow releases, because if I'm rebuying something like the Killer Clowns that came out, the Killer Clowns was out previously in a really deluxe edition, and then Arrow did it, and I'm like, well, this is going to be the best one to have. And they basically took all the extras from the previous release and put it on this one, so you can toss your old disc, and it's something else we're going to talk about next.
Right.
Toss all your old copies, because this is the one. I think the reason we get so many really cool films about Arrow collections that are Asian and Italian cinema is because in England they truly greatly appreciate that stuff. They're a little closer geographically,
right.
So there's a big fan base and scholar base for spaghetti westerns and things like that. So Arrow's British, they produce it all out there, and they kindly also release it here so people like me can own them. So I could go on and on and on. Complete Sartana, if you love spaghetti westerns like I do, this is an absolute must own. If you are curious about spaghetti westerns, these aren't the spaghetti westerns, but these are really damn good ones. I loved this. This is the kind of thing I would buy if I didn't get it for free. So, speaking of things I may or may not buy if I didn't get them for free.
Right, and a little bit more local, a little bit more closer to home. More closer, that's kind of doubly redundant again. But Arrow focuses its retrospective eye and restorative, I don't know, eye on a filmmaker who, in my opinion, doesn't get a lot of the credit that he really deserves. Wes Craven kind of embarked on the scene. I don't know if this was his first film. I can't imagine that it was. I'm getting a nod that it was necessarily here. But I think certainly the one that brought him to attention as a filmmaker, and he's done a lot of good work. Arrow goes back and talks a lot about and gives us a really highlighted classic from a story about a couple of girls who on their birthday decide to go out and kind of have a rollicking good time, but unfortunately they don't in Last House on the Left.
Tender, too. So make Sunbeam bread your favorite choice.
Yes. It's not the Last House on the Left, strangely enough. I've always called it that. It's formally Last House on the Left.
So,
don't know what that means.
Wes Craven's first feature. He had been an adult filmmaker before this.
Yes,
Some of the people in this film were performers in such films. I had heard, and I don't know if this is true, I didn't watch all the extras. I had heard this originally started as an adult film or was going to have some of that content in there, but they cut it out. I don't really know. I got to watch the extras to find out. So this has been on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD. This is the Blu-ray premiere, I believe, in this country. And it looks the best it's ever looked. This is a film that always looked, this was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep.
On videotape, it looked terrible, and it made it more effective because it felt like this movie that like escaped from hell, and you shouldn't be seeing it. It made it feel almost documentary-esque or like a stuff movie.
Yeah.
And like Chainsaw Massacre, the acting is not great in this film. the technical aspects are not that great in this movie, which almost make it feel more real in some ways. I don't really like this movie. I've seen it a bunch of times. Part of it is that the tone is really grim, and what goes on is extremely grim and unpleasant. But part of it is, too, the acting is very casual and ad-libby. The sound recording isn't great. Right. A lot of the camera work and editing isn't that great. So I can't really get into it, but I think all of what I don't like about it also works to make it feel more nasty and savage and real. So I respect it for how effective it is. This set, the film looks the best it ever has. It's got multiple commentaries.
But so does glossing it up, the terrific transfer that Arrow always gives us, does that negate some of that effect?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it is what it is. It's just, I remember how I first saw it. And some people didn't like it when Texas Chainsaw Massacre was made to look beautiful because it had always looked like garbage. And to me, the effect with Chainsaw Massacre was, this movie looks beautiful and it's the 70s and it's blue skies and young, happy people. And then when stuff goes south, it's even more shocking than when it looks like crap. So I think this movie still doesn't look that great because it's just shot in dingy New York apartments and stuff like that.
I'm sure it was 16 and
in all likelihood, it probably was. So this is loaded with extras. This is actually a 3-disc set. The first Blu-ray is the most uncut version of the film that exists, with a little Wes Craven introduction that was shot obviously before he died. And that plays out, and there's multiple commentaries, tons of extras of every aspect. I mean, interviews with everybody, at least one interview session with everybody who's in the film who was alive, with, you know, every aspect of the film is covered. Disc 2 is the Krug and Company cut, which was like a slightly edited version that was played in some areas, and also the R-rated cut. The unrated version of this is either call it unrated or call it X, whatever you will. There's nothing ridiculously explicit in the movie. It's just more tone and some of the violence. And then there's the CD soundtrack. All the David Hess music and all the incidental score is available as a CD that comes with this. And the packaging is cool and it has all that other stuff too. So while it's not a movie I like, this is the version to own. If you're a huge fan, unless you want to collect the old copies, make space on your shelf for this because you don't need to buy it again after this. And you have seen this film back when it came out? Or elsewhere?
Well, probably not in its actual release. You know, this was one of those. I
mean, it played drive-ins for a decade.
Right,
and
I in the back of my mind, I equate this with like I Spit on Your Grave and those kinds of things, where it was subversive and you had to sneak in to get it. I don't remember when it was originally released.
72.
Right, so I would have been 10. So I think it was on turnarounds later on or something like that. I saw it early. I think I was like 14 or 15, and was struck by much of what you'd said. Gee, kind of low quality, and at the time I'd seen enough movies to be cognizant of production techniques and things. And so while it wasn't one of my favorites, I for want of a better term, respected it for what it was, the brutality of it that it was bringing it across, and have followed Craven ever since because you know, he kind of tends to make films that I tend to like. So I didn't see it originally, but I certainly saw it in theaters, and then followed it as it came out on the VHS and DVDs and all those.
And as I was talking about with some other Arrow stuff, this had been released as an MGM DVD 2-disc set, probably in the 90s, that was extremely deluxe. And since we no longer have Wes Craven around to talk about this, unless you get a Ouija board or a shovel and some jumper cables, we're relying on basically, I think they've ported over pretty much all the extras from that old set, and then and more. So that's how you get 3 or 4 commentaries and stuff like that. I mean, the movie is still the movie; that hasn't changed. So that is out now, and that is there to tantalize, terrify, or turn your stomach, depending on your predilection there. Up next is the final film to talk about today, Arrow release. This is another Seijun Suzuki film. We've been talking about his movies in sets that they've been putting out, the early years sets. This is a film standalone, and this is a great title. Only the Japanese would, or the Italians would have a title as wonderful as Detective Bureau 2-3, Go to Hell, Bastards.
Tony Tiger, a great way to sweeten up the day.
Okay.
I have no idea what that said.
Okay. So, nor do I. The film does have an English subtitle track, just so as you all know. Sometimes the trailers.
Is it also dubbed or not?
No. Okay. This is a lot of these Japanese films were never released outside of Japanese-speaking territories. So there was never an English dub prepared back then, so most of what we get for these Seijun Suzuki sets are subtitles, which doesn't bother me a bit.
Right.
I mean, it's funny, we talked about Sartana, and I prefer the English dub on those, partly because if I need to, I can look away from the screen and still follow the story.
Right.
Or if I start to doze off, I can still hear the dialogue. Not that
Well,
the film's
at some
putting me
point we
to sleep.
talked about, I seem to recall that I was mentioning, and what I forget what the story was, but it's an art to lay in subtitles, because in many respects I don't think you can't read and then pay attention to the image. So really well done subtitles, you don't lose anything looking down, because you look back up and somebody's been smart enough to put those subtitles in there so that then when you look back up, it's time to watch something.
Subtitle timing.
Right.
That's really true, because there are some films, Asian films I'll watch, especially if it's like a period piece martial arts swordplay movies, and they're really dialogue heavy in the beginning, setting up who everybody is.
Right.
And my eyes are completely focused on reading the words and
Right.
trying to keep up with those. And I can barely process what's being said because the subtitles go by too fast.
Right.
And I'm not seeing any of the visuals. So sometimes it takes me quite a while
You
to
had
get
to watch
into
them
a
twice
film.
or something,
Yeah,
yeah.
and who has time for that? Not me. Unless it's Cannonball.
You'd be the only one, right?
So this is early 60s film, gorgeous color. Need we say with the Arrow release that it's going to look really good? And basically it is about, we have, I can't remember, is his name on here? It's Joe Shishido. He was a guy who did not find a lot of success as an actor, went and had plastic surgery to look more distinct, and they basically gave him what I call chipmunk cheeks. His whole top of his face looks inflated. It's very distracting, but for some reason it paid off, and he became like a leading man at Nikatsu for some reason. And to me, the whole time I'm looking at him, it's like, is he holding air in his cheeks? Don't be offended. Is he storing his nuts in his cheeks?
Craft services table too much.
Yeah, it's weird. It was Marshmallow Fluff. Is he trying to be the Godfather? They go down here, not up there. I don't know. Anyway, you get over that because he's a pretty cool guy in these films. And here, the film opens with, which I guess was an issue of the day, black market arms dealing or the Yakuza in the U.S. Army working together and doing dirty deals. Basically, you see the beginning of a film, a U.S. Army base truck gets robbed and all these guns and things get stolen and munitions. And Joe Yoshido. Good time Joe. He's a guy, old chipmunk cheeks, decides to go undercover as a criminal to try to infiltrate their organization and find out, where these weapons are, because it's a country that doesn't have guns in it or weapons like we do here. So it's a really bad thing that these things are out there, and what hands are they going to get into? According to the extras I was looking at here, apparently it's a country that does not have a lot of guns. You can have a license to be a hunter, but that's about it. And the Yakuza even, I guess to this day, are mostly knives. They're not really guns. So the idea that maybe the criminal underworld would have all of these like guns and grenades and stuff was troubling. So it's really, an undercover, it's almost like, Departed or Infernal Affairs or something. It's somebody going undercover and not trying to be found out.
Okay.
And within all of that, there is some really good humor at times. I mean, some of it is just comedy relief characters, but some of it is sort of ridiculous situations. Like he's undercover in a club and one of his fellow undercover people shows up as a dancer. I think you see it in the trailer. She's like doing a musical number in this club, and he stands up and impromptu starts singing with her and doing this dance number. And it's like, wow, he's really fast on his feet, literally. And you do get these really kind of lavish production numbers that are, it's not like a Oklahoma carousel kind of Rodgers and Hammerstein musical number. It's like somebody singing a song in a club, but you get a rock band in a club and it's really cool and stylishly shot. This is the same guy who did Branded to Kill and Tokyo Drifter and other things, so there's some real style there. This is, I believe, before those movies. And it's not terribly long. And again, when I say Japanese movie, I'm like, so this is going to be 2 hours and 45 minutes, right?
Right, yeah.
This is like 90 minutes. It's not terribly loaded as far as the extras go. There's an interview with, I believe his name is Tony Raines. He's a British critic who knows far more about me than any of this stuff. And he goes on and on about this film and where Suzuki, was in his career at that point and all the actors. And he gives you that kind of context for the film. And that's very interesting. But other than that, it's just a trailer on it. So I really enjoyed this. I've been really enjoying the Suzuki sets that we've been getting. And I was surprised this one came out by itself, but that's cool because if you just want to test one of this guy's movies, I love Arrow, but they're not cheap. One Arrow disc is far more affordable than a 5-disc set. Let's just say that much. So at any rate, that is out tomorrow, I believe, on Blu-ray from Arrow. And that's all we have.
Marvelous.
With time to spare.
Indeed.
So next week, it looks like we have Hotel Transsexual. Oh, no, that's probably Transylvania.
Right.
It's hard to tell when they're abbreviated like that. Hotel Transylvania, Skyscraper,
Yep.
Which may or may not be like two films that I saw as a kid combined, Towering
yes.
Inferno and Die Hard.
Well, I've been thinking that it's been a while. They haven't redone the Towering Inferno. They did Poseidon. The Poseidon
Yes.
Adventure became Poseidon, but they haven't done Towering Inferno. So I was just thinking that could be. And I like The Rock. Sorry.
I like him. I think he makes about 95% bad movies, but he's personable.
Don't tell him that. Yeah.
No, not to his
He might
face. Of
just-
course
he might
not. I
just
would
punch
say
you
you
right
make
out.
successful
Yeah.
films, sir. They're very popular. It's a very
Although I
popular
wasn't
title.
crazy about the new Jumanji. So
See, we split on the new Jumanji.
indeed.
So, unless there's any other automotive mishaps you'd like to tell them,
Not I. We'll have to wait until next week for me to tell you about more collisions.
at which point I will still be Mark,
And I will be Tom.
and we still will be the
Cinemaniacs.
Cinemaniacs.